I am for the death penalty in certain situations such as domestic terrorism, international terrorism, and mass shootings.
I think I've always been against the death penalty since I've known about it way back for a whole variety of reasons. Number one, it's not clear to me that anybody is served well by having the death penalty. It puts the state in the position of being really cruel and inhumane in terms of treatment of citizens. Second, there's no really good solid evidence that the family of victims really get any relief out of the execution, particularly in the context of the United States, where appeal after appeal after appeal often means it's 8 to 10 to 12 to 15 to 20 years before an execution occurs. Each time the case comes up for a new trial or a new hearing, the family of the victims are put back through the entire scenario over and over again. Additionally, as we see globally, the United States is profoundly out of step with most of the rest of the world. Most developed countries have eliminated the death penalty. The United States is now one of a small group of countries that still engages in the death penalty, many of whom are countries with whom we perceived ourselves not to be associated because they're countries with strong human rights abuses, such as China, Saudi Arabia, etc.
Okay, I'm against the death penalty because, from a human rights perspective, as the president of Amnesty International here on campus, I think that it's a violation of a person's basic human rights, and I don't think that the solution to certain crimes should be to commit another crime by just murdering them. Like, if someone commits murder, why do you punish them by committing murder and using that as an example to other citizens? It doesn't make sense. It's a paradox to me.
I am for the death penalty due to the fact that if the crime fits the punishment, pay the price for the crime. I strongly believe that if you have the guts to take someone's life, you're willing to die for yours as well. I think that dying a fast and painless death is normally acceptable and can be a form of execution.
We've seen failure after failure after failure of the lethal injection drugs to work properly. Some of them requiring persons to be in agony for quite a long period of time before drugs take effect. We discovered that even the drug manufacturers who are making the lethal injection drugs are beginning to withdraw those from the market. I think over concerns that the broader public sees that as to be an inhumane way of taking a human life, and even the drug companies don't want to be associated now so much with the practice.
In the situation of a single murder, I would say a single time, a single case, maybe it was provoked. I would say that life in prison without parole would be the suitable choice. But once again, for any type of mass shooting, domestic or international terrorism, I would say death penalty is the correct option.
I would choose life without parole, but I still think that it needs to be used incredibly sparingly. It's the without parole part that I have problems with. I think that needs to be reserved for very extreme cases of people who a slew of professionals believe cannot be rehabilitated, because otherwise I just don't think that a crime that someone's commits can never be like rehabilitated from, except for in the like a few rare cases. So yes, I choose that option, but I am still worried about it being abused as an option and too many people getting that life without parole. um, that I just don't like the idea of them not having the option to be released even if they are rehabilitated at some point in their incarceration.
I would personally choose the death penalty due to the fact that I would want to spend the rest of my life in prison and not able to be free. Um, I believe that when you're incarcerated for life, you're technically already dead in my eyes, just due to the fact that your days are already managed by some guard who believes that you should have 23 hours, in a box and 1 hour free time to do your personal things. So that's my belief.
So at this point, we have 40 or 50 years worth of studies on whether the death penalty acts as a deterrent. There's no evidence whatsoever that indicates that it does. States that have capital punishment often have the highest murder rates. States without the death penalty often have the lowest murder rates. So there's just no clear indication that it acts as a deterrent at all. It's also the case that most homicides are committed either as an act of passion, in which case a person is not engaging in rational reflection about the death penalty, or they're very calculated homicides, but calculated homicides tend to be carried out by persons who presume that because of their careful planning will never get caught. So I don't see any evidence whatsoever that it acts as a real deterrent.
I do believe the death penalty is a deterrent, and the reason why it is a successful deterrent is because in human nature alone, the goal is to preserve and excel in your life, and self-preservation is essential, and the fact that you could be, the consequence of your action could be the takeaway of that life should be deterrent enough.
The death penalty is not an effective deterrent. The reason people are getting the death penalty are usually for crimes of like homicide or similar instances, or sometimes way less than that. But these people like who are committing these crimes and then given the death penalty for are not, I feel like they're not doing them because they like want to. They're doing them out of like circumstances, just as I think a lot of crimes are committed, out of like circumstantial, environmental reasons, psychological reasons. So to say that it's a deterrent isn't really effective, because I think they'll still commit these crimes because of like outside pressures or internal pressures if it's psychological problems.
Honestly, I don't think it will become a deterrent for many people, because due to the fact that a lot of people do it for mental issues, religious belief, and in some cases, you know, they just reach their breaking point. If due to the fact that it was kind of one of those cases where, you know, hey, he might have not done it, there should be some kind of, you know, second eyes put on the actual case, just in case, you know, they miss a piece of evidence or something was overlooked or wasn't presented. You know, there's been many cases in the judicial system, period, that's found a person not guilty or falsely accused of something due to the fact that, hey, this wasn't presented during his initial, causing people to waste, you know, time in jail. So I believe that a second set of eyes in everyone's case put on a death penalty is something that should be done.
Okay, so planning this many executions in that like short amount of time, and giving the reasoning that like, oh, our products are expiring, that's just such a problematic argument, like especially on like behalf of like a governmental agency. Like you can't just be like, oh, we need to kill all these people now before these products expire, and then think that will be okay, and that won't like catch the eye of like every humanitarian organization out there. So I'm definitely against that decision.
Of course, the reason for the sort of mass executions was their concern that they were going to run out of the availability of the drugs to carry out the execution. Clearly, since I'm opposed to the death penalty, that's hardly a legitimate reason. But even if one would assume that is the case, one of the things we know is that the executions take a huge toll even on the persons who are doing the executions. They tend to be very dehumanizing, actually create conditions of post-traumatic stress syndrome in the persons who are carrying out executions. To carry out mass executions not only is barbaric, I think, in terms of what it indicates about who we are as a society, but puts an undue burden on the persons who have been required to carry out those sentences.
I think it is completely unethical for a state to put down or execute or lethally inject inmates based solely on the fact that their investment in lethal drugs will expire.